Cool. So once we've determined kind of where we are and where we want to go, now let's talk about systemizing this thing. Let's talk about systemizing this thing. So I created this system creation flow, and I'll just kind of walk through this, and then we'll talk about kind of how this translates to acquisitions teams, each step of these, and how we're going to actually, like, throughout this training, kind of cover each one of these components. So really this can account for any system, whether we're trying to systemize our cold calling operation, our project management, our how we process emails, whatever it is that you want to systemize. This is it. First step is to map it out, get it out of your head, make a flow chart of the input, the output, starting point and end point, and then what are the steps that have to happen in between the starting point and the end point. Boom. Do that. We'll talk about that. And that is just your process. We have a sample one that you guys can kind of use as inspiration. And by the way, if you guys want access to this worksheet, then I just put the link in the chat so you guys can download that worksheet and keep it on record, take notes on it, open it up in your Notability to kind of take notes along with me. The second thing that we do is document it. So after you mapped it out, after you've created your process map, really the goal here is to determine what the major squares are in your process flow chart. What are the major kind of key functions? Not every single thing needs to have a checklist for it, all right? You just have to determine what the major levers are inside of that process that needs a process written out. I think the 80-20 of it with sales is your script. All right, so when we think about documentation, when it comes to sales, it's script. You also have documentation for the pipeline management and how the offer is created and stuff like that. But the 80-20 is just the script. We're going to talk a little bit about that. The third step in the system creation flow is execute. And execute just means that you have a defined system of record for your acquisitions person to do his job really, really, really well. And if you guys were on the last call that we did with Eric, he has basically built a system of execution based on the iPad. You want to talk a little bit about this and how things kind of get digitized on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly what Dan said. So I have my product that I sell is all of this kind of system, but the templates that I use to bring all of this to an iPad. So it's all digital. So everything from and this is the reason behind this is not just to be digital, it's efficiency. The faster you can move without paper, it helps everything. The scanning, printing, all of that stuff goes away as soon as you can just carry everything digital. So that was a big benchmark that I wanted to achieve years ago. And when Apple came out with their Pencil, I just kind of dove in with an obsession to create my sales process on the iPad digital. And so, we cover everything from the analysis on the deal analyzer side, through the contracts, and then all of the way through the credibility packet, the letter, the offer sheets, the team credibility, the testimonials, the subject property information, all of the comps, everything all together in a digital format that leads right into a purchase and sale agreement. And really the big winner doing this process is the ability to do it in a transparent way that leads to a client net sheet. And that's really what one of the winning ingredients that we use is a client net sheet to really help the decision go forward.
Yep. So he was able to make this whole process paperless using technology as the guide rails for his acquisitions person to be the rock star. And the iPad, I think, is probably like the number one, or at least some sort of tablet, number one way to do it in person. And even on a Zoom, you can do like what I'm doing right now. Right. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. The fourth thing, once you are executing, is to track it. you guys know that we are no strangers to KPIs. So reporting the stats of your acquisitions process, what's working, what's not working. How do you know if your system is working if you don't track it and the measurable parts of it, at least? Even the qualitative parts can be tracked, because what Eric does, because he's built the system on his iPad, is he's actually able to record the appointment. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so that, keeping track of, how many appointments you went on and how many contracts you got, that's really simple. And that's what we should all be doing. And I'm sure we're all doing that, right? That's the most simple KPIs. But when you try to go deeper than that on like what's really pulling contracts together, or what's making them fall apart, what's working at seller appointments, what's not, all of that, that's the layer that's much harder to problem solve. And as an acquisition manager, that's something that was set on my plate often. And so I was trying to always diagnose, the talent level, or the capacity of the salesperson. And that's, again, really hard to do from a blind one angle perspective. And so with the iPad system, we're able to hit record and record the audio of the environment. So the person can go out to the property, have the iPad recording the audio, work through the whole sales process, and come back with that file, with the signed contracts, with the audio and everything for a debrief. So if it went well, we could capture the things that went well. If it went bad, then we could identify what went bad, make those adjustments. But then you can start really peeling apart the real training, right? Which is hard for us to identify oftentimes.
We'll touch on that a little bit too, but it is possible to like record what you're doing on your iPad in real time with the audio of the actual appointment. So you can go back and see what worked, what didn't work, give feedback and constantly iterate, which brings us to the next section, which is just reviewing it, right? Now that we have a mechanism to record and track, now it's just reviewing.
Yep.
And that can take a bunch of different shapes. But for us, it's just the weekly calls, right? And I think when you're first starting this, it's really more of a daily thing, right, Eric?
Yeah. So reviewing, understanding a process to review, having a process to review. So what are we reviewing? Why? How does that go? That all matters. So every salesperson, I have a sales journal that I just keep in touch with, and what I expect the rock stars to keep in touch with. And it's a journal that allows for this level of awareness and review to just take place. So I always encourage people to, we have to be just hungry students, always, because there's something out there for us to learn on each and every appointment. So documenting that, have a system around that, makes it easy, but makes your acceleration through this incredible.
Yeah. And you got to take ego out of it and try to just like face the reality of like, I know that didn't go super well, but let's listen to it and figure out why. Even if it really pains you to have to listen to it. We hear all the time, like, my cold caller isn't making any leads. Well, when's the last time you listened to one of his calls? Chances are they haven't listened to the calls because they're afraid of what they're going to hear.
Yep. Almost always.
Yeah.
Almost always. Yeah. It's very, very, very true. And I sat in that seat. I get it. Difference maker, big time.
Yeah. And that box should say review, by the way. It shouldn't say business. So edit that out. And then the last box, once we reviewed what we tracked based on what we executed, based on the document and the process that we created, is improving it. Putting it through a system of improvement and constant iteration and improvement. We call it Kaizen, daily improvement. And that is just simply taking what you learned during your weekly calls and then implementing it back into the process, feeding it back in and using, putting out tests, maybe just tweaking the script, tweaking the language patterns, NLP, and then, baking that into your training process from here on out so that just becomes part of best practices moving forward.
Yeah, this to me, what we're looking at right here is it's a success pattern, right? This is the circle of excellence. If you keep doing this again and again and again, you will inevitably end up at the top eventually, right? How long it takes you, it's up to you. But I mean, like, that's the circle of excellence in my world, in my view. And like, if you stay dedicated to that, your process just will really shine. And essentially that what we're looking at is my iPad system, was just gone years of that, just going through this pace again. And every time I come back and I would debrief and I'd break it down and I'd figure things out that were different and better, ask different questions and keep that going. Boom, 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 boom. You know, so I'm just excited to for the, you know, for some people just to offer the front of the line, you know, just cut out this piece, you know, or, you know, helps.
Absolutely. And so you can apply the same system creation flow to whatever you're doing. But this is kind of just a good review of how what we're about to talk about maps to each component of the systemization process. So